When Caitlin Clark signed a massive deal with Adidas, it sent ripples across the sports industry, and none felt it more intensely than Nike CEO, John Donahoe. For years, Nike had reigned supreme in the athletic wear game, locking in top athletes, especially rising stars in basketball. The company had built a brand so strong that its iconic swoosh symbol felt synonymous with success. But Clark's deal with Adidas threatened that position. This wasn't just another endorsement deal. This was a game-changing move in the world of sports marketing and athlete endorsements, and Nike's response was swift, calculated, and in true Donahoe style, fiery. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Clark, the dynamic Iowa guard, had been on the radar of major brands since her collegiate basketball career took off. She wasn't just any athlete, she had the kind of star power that commanded attention on and off the court. Her energy, passion, and ability to light up any game made her a perfect candidate for a big-time deal. Everyone knew that Adidas landing her was a major coup, but what no one expected was how hard Nike would hit back. For Donahoe, the signing of Clark to Adidas was a direct challenge, and he wasn't about to take it lying down. The firestorm started when Donahoe publicly addressed the deal. In a press conference that could only be described as part business strategy and part sports drama, Donahoe gave a measured yet pointed response. He acknowledged Clark's talent and even threw in a bit of praise, but it was clear that Nike wasn't going to be outdone. "We've seen athletes like Caitlin before, and we'll see them again," he remarked with a wry smile, brushing off the Adidas deal as though it was just another bump in Nike's long road of domination. That wasn't all, though. Nike didn't just talk, it acted. Within days, reports surfaced that the brand had locked in conversations with other rising basketball stars, making moves to fortify its roster. If Adidas thought they could dethrone Nike with one high-profile signing, Donahoe's team was quick to remind everyone just how deep their influence ran. It wasn't just about one athlete, and Nike was determined to show that their strategy was built to outlast any flashy moves by their competitors. Behind the scenes, there was more going on than met the eye. Nike had been doubling down on its long-term partnerships with athletes, focusing on brand loyalty rather than quick signings. While Adidas was known for making bold, headline-grabbing moves, Nike had a more methodical approach. It had built an empire by establishing a culture around its athletes, something Donahoe emphasized repeatedly in the aftermath of the Adidas-Clark deal. However, Donahoe wasn't without his quirks. His response to the deal also carried an element of humor, as anyone familiar with his style could attest. Known for his dry wit, Donahoe made light of the situation in a way that diffused some of the tension. During a media roundtable following the Adidas announcement, he quipped, "I'm sure they'll sell a few shoes, but we'll keep doing what we do best, winning." It was vintage Donahoe, turning a potential PR storm into a moment of levity, while still reminding everyone who was at the top of the mountain. Nike's reaction wasn't just about words, though. The company began rolling out an aggressive marketing campaign to reinforce its position as the leader in athletic apparel. They signed several promising young athletes and launched new collaborations to keep the Nike brand at the forefront of everyone's minds. Donahoe wasn't going to let the Adidas deal steal the limelight for long. He knew that Nike's strength was its ability to innovate and adapt quickly, and they leaned into that philosophy with renewed vigor. The implications of Clark's Adidas deal for Nike went beyond just one athlete. This was a fight for the future. Clark represented a new generation of athletes who had grown up with social media, who understood the power of their brand, and who were more independent than ever before. This new breed of stars wasn't necessarily loyal to any one company or legacy, and that's what made Clark's deal so significant. Nike had built its empire on the loyalty of athletes who had grown up idolizing the brand. But Clark's move to Adidas signaled a shift in that dynamic. Nike, for all its dominance, had to find new ways to stay relevant to the next generation of superstars. Donahoe understood this better than most. He wasn't just reacting to a competitor snagging a top athlete. He was responding to a changing landscape in sports marketing. Athletes today were more empowered than ever before. With platforms like Instagram and TikTok, they had direct access to their fan bases, and their reach extended far beyond the confines of the court or the field. This was about brand power, and Clark's deal was a reminder that athletes were calling more of the shots. Donahoe, though, was never one to back down from a challenge. In the weeks following Clark's Adidas deal, Nike's next moves were watched closely. Rumors swirled about potential new partnerships and campaigns designed to solidify Nike's grip on the basketball world. Donahoe, ever the strategist, played his cards close to the chest. He let the media speculate, knowing that Nike's response would be felt in due time. The company didn't need to make any hasty moves. They were biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to remind everyone why they were still the brand to beat. The Adidas deal may have made headlines, but Nike had history on its side. The brand had built its empire on the backs of athletes like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Serena Williams, icons who had shaped not just their sports, but the culture surrounding them. Donahoe knew that while one deal could create buzz, true legacy was built over time. Adidas might have won a battle, but Nike was playing the long game. They weren't interested in quick wins. They were focused on sustaining dominance. There was no doubt that Clark's deal with Adidas was a wake-up call for Nike. But Donahoe's response showed that the company wasn't afraid to evolve. In a world where athletes had more power than ever, Nike had to adapt. And under Donahoe's leadership, they were doing just that. The company started investing more in athlete-driven content and partnerships that focused on authenticity and long-term growth. They weren't just signing athletes to wear their gear. They were building relationships that transcended the game. As the dust settled from the Adidas Clark announcement, one thing was clear. The battle between Nike and Adidas was far from over. Clark's deal was a bold move, and it signaled that Adidas was serious about challenging Nike's dominance. But Nike wasn't backing down. Donahoe's response was a testament to his belief in the brand's staying power. For him, this was just another chapter in the ongoing saga of athletic endorsements, and he was ready for whatever came next. Nike, as always, had a plan. They weren't going to be dethroned easily. Donahoe's confidence in the brand's ability to adapt and thrive was unshakable. Clark's deal was big, but Nike had weathered bigger storms before. As the sports world watched the drama unfold, Nike was quietly preparing for its next move, one that would keep them at the top of the game for years to come. In the immediate aftermath of Caitlin Clark's deal with Adidas, Nike's next steps were as intriguing as they were calculated. Donahoe, ever the master strategist, knew that simply reacting wasn't enough. Nike needed to refocus its message, and quickly. Rather than getting caught in the frenzy of the news cycle, the company set its sights on what it does best: building deeper connections with its athletes and amplifying their personal brands. One of Nike's first moves after Clark's deal was to bolster its relationships with female athletes. While Clark was undeniably a huge asset for Adidas, Nike wasn't short on female sports stars. The company started to put more energy into its existing partnerships, highlighting athletes like Sabrina Ionescu, Naomi Osaka, and Simone Biles. These weren't just deals on paper. Nike had invested in these women's stories for years, and now, with the spotlight on Clark, they were ready to elevate their profiles even further. Nike also focused on grassroots efforts in basketball. With Clark off the table, Donahoe and his team knew the value of cultivating the next generation of stars from the ground up. Nike had long been a dominant force in youth sports and high school basketball programs, and it doubled down on that approach. By investing in young athletes early, Nike was looking not just to compete with Adidas in the short term, but to dominate the long game. The brand leaned into its partnerships with basketball camps, tournaments, and development programs to continue feeding the pipeline of talent that had made it so successful in the past. In an interesting twist, Nike also started ramping up its technology and innovation efforts in footwear and apparel, signaling that the brand wasn't content to compete solely on who could sign the biggest names. New product launches were teased, and while the details were kept under wraps, it was clear that Nike was positioning itself as the leader in both athletic performance and innovation. By staying ahead of the curve, Nike sought to maintain its status as the go-to brand for athletes serious about their game. Another strategic move was Nike's push into storytelling. Donahoe understood that today's athletes were more than just players. They were influencers with platforms and millions of followers. Nike had been one of the first brands to recognize this shift, and now, more than ever, they leaned into it. The company expanded its digital content strategies, creating more athlete-driven media that connected athletes with their fans in personal and authentic ways. Whether it was through social media, video content, or interactive experiences, Nike was focused on deepening the bond between its athletes and the public. Despite the buzz around Clark's deal, Nike knew that success in the sportswear industry wasn't built on a single name. It was about longevity, relationships, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. Donahoe, with his calm but confident demeanor, made it clear that Nike's mission hadn't changed. The brand was going to continue doing what it had always done, setting the pace for everyone else to follow. And with every move they made, it became evident that Nike wasn't just responding to the challenge. They were evolving, as they always had, to stay at the pinnacle of sports culture. Nike's response to Caitlin Clark's Adidas deal marked a turning point in how the brand approached athlete signings and endorsements. While many assumed that Clark's defection to Adidas would dent Nike's reputation, the company instead saw it as an opportunity to innovate and grow. At the heart of Nike's response was a recognition that the landscape of athlete endorsements was shifting. It wasn't just about who had the biggest contracts, it was about who had the strongest and most authentic connections with their fans. Nike had always excelled in this area, and Clark's move only sharpened their focus. As the dust settled, one of Nike's most significant moves was strengthening its position in women's sports. Clark's deal had drawn attention to the rising power of female athletes in the marketplace, and Nike wasn't about to be left behind. The brand had already been a major player in supporting female athletes, but the deal made it clear that this was an area of potential growth. Nike had long understood that women's sports were an untapped goldmine, and Clark's deal with Adidas only reinforced that notion. Nike didn't just rely on existing stars like Ionescu and Osaka to carry their message. The company began investing more heavily in the up-and-coming generation of female athletes. They expanded their presence in women's college basketball and the NBA, working closely with players who were on the cusp of breaking out. Nike had built its reputation on recognizing potential early, and the company's strategy was now about finding the next Caitlin Clark before Adidas could. This meant not only signing young athletes but also developing them into household names through savvy marketing and brand partnerships. Nike wasn't just interested in selling shoes. They wanted to shape the culture around women's sports in a way that would solidify their dominance for decades to come. At the same time, Nike began reevaluating how it approached athlete endorsements in general. The traditional model, where brands would sign athletes based on their performance and celebrity status, was starting to feel outdated. Donahoe and his team recognized that athletes were becoming more than just sports figures. They were evolving into cultural icons with influence that extended far beyond the court, the field, or the track. With this in mind, Nike shifted its strategy to focus more on athletes who could help them engage with diverse communities and global audiences. The company was increasingly looking for athletes who could connect on a deeper, more personal level with their fans. Athletes who were not just champions but also role models, influencers, and activists. Nike's redefined approach to athlete endorsements was part of a larger trend in the sports industry. Social media had given athletes unprecedented control over their image and messaging. No longer were they dependent on brands to tell their story. They could do it themselves with a few taps on their phone. For companies like Nike, this presented both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge was that brands no longer held the same level of control over the narrative. The opportunity, however, was that Nike could partner with athletes in more collaborative ways, allowing them to co-create campaigns and content that felt more authentic to the athlete's personality and mission. Donahoe, known for his ability to adapt to changing markets, recognized this shift early. Under his leadership, Nike began fostering a more collaborative environment with its athletes. Instead of dictating terms, they opened the floor to discussions about what the athletes wanted to achieve, both on and off the field. For many athletes, this was a breath of fresh air. Nike wasn't just asking them to wear a pair of shoes. They were inviting them into the conversation about how to shape their brand and career. This gave Nike a distinct advantage over competitors like Adidas, who were still using more traditional models of athlete partnerships. Clark's Adidas deal also sparked a broader conversation about the role of brands in shaping athletes' legacies. In the past, athletes were often seen as extensions of the brand itself. If you signed with Nike, for instance, you were expected to embody the qualities that Nike stood for: excellence, performance, and innovation. But with athletes now building their own brands through social media, that dynamic was starting to change. Athletes wanted more control over their legacy, and brands like Nike had to adapt to that new reality. In response, Nike began positioning itself less as a brand that athletes would simply endorse and more as a partner that could help athletes build their personal brands. This shift was subtle but significant. Nike understood that athletes today wanted more than just a paycheck. They wanted to create something lasting, something that would outlive their playing career. By offering athletes the tools and platform to do just that, Nike positioned itself as the ideal partner for athletes who were thinking beyond the game. Another area where Nike made strategic moves was in digital innovation. While Adidas had made waves with Clark's signing, Nike doubled down on their technological prowess, integrating more wearable tech, performance data, and custom experiences into their products. They launched a new line of connected footwear that provided real-time performance feedback, something that resonated with younger athletes who were increasingly tech-savvy. Nike's digital platforms also allowed athletes to interact directly with fans in new and immersive ways, something that Adidas had yet to fully capitalize on. But Nike's innovation didn't stop at products. They also began enhancing their digital marketing strategy, focusing on storytelling and social engagement. The brand leaned into content creation that blurred the lines between athlete and influencer, sports and lifestyle. Athletes weren't just seen dunking basketballs or running sprints. They were cooking meals, traveling, spending time with family, and giving back to their communities. By showcasing the full range of their athletes' lives, Nike made their stars more relatable, more human, and ultimately more marketable. The Caitlin Clark deal also prompted Nike to revisit its relationship with collegiate athletes. As the rules around college athletes' ability to profit from their name, image, and likeness (NIL) evolved, Nike saw an opportunity to strengthen its ties to the next generation of sports superstars. College athletes were no longer just waiting for the pros to start making money. They were building their brands while still in school. Nike, which had long-standing relationships with major college programs, was well-positioned to tap into this new market. They began ramping up their NIL efforts, signing young athletes who had the potential to become the next big thing while they were still in college. This gave Nike a pipeline of talent that could potentially rival any deals Adidas was making. As Nike forged ahead with these new strategies, it became clear that the company's success wasn't just about signing the biggest names. It was about staying ahead of trends and understanding where the industry was headed. Clark's deal was a wake-up call, but it wasn't a threat. For Donahoe and Nike, it was a reminder that the game was always changing, and the key to winning was adapting faster than anyone else. At the same time, Nike didn't neglect its roots. The company remained focused on producing high-quality performance gear, continuing to lead the way in innovation when it came to footwear and apparel. From the Air Zoom to the Flyknit, Nike had always been at the forefront of creating products that not only looked good, but also enhanced an athlete's performance. This remained a cornerstone of the brand's identity. While Adidas might have been making headlines with big-name deals, Nike was focusing on creating the kind of products that would keep athletes performing at their best. In the long run, that's what mattered most. Nike's forward-thinking approach extended to how they dealt with cultural shifts, particularly when it came to diversity and social issues. While the company had always aligned itself with athletes who took a stand on social issues, the years following Clark's deal saw Nike leaning even more heavily into this space. Athletes today were more vocal than ever about the causes they cared about, and Nike wasn't shy about amplifying those voices. The company recognized that younger consumers in particular wanted to support brands that stood for something. By aligning with athletes who were pushing for change, whether that was racial justice, gender equality, or environmental sustainability, Nike ensured that it remained relevant to a generation that expected more from the companies they supported. This strategy was evident in Nike's partnership with athletes like Colin Kaepernick, who had become a lightning rod for discussions around activism in sports. While Kaepernick wasn't a current player, his influence in the sports world was undeniable. Nike had been one of the few brands to stand by him during the height of the controversy surrounding his protests, and that loyalty paid off in spades. Not only did the partnership with Kaepernick resonate with millions of consumers, but it also solidified Nike's position as a brand that wasn't afraid to take risks when it came to social issues. Nike's ability to adapt to cultural moments also extended to its marketing campaigns. In the wake of the Clark deal, Nike launched a series of ad campaigns that focused not just on sports but on what it meant to be an athlete in today's world. These campaigns showcased athletes not only as competitors but as leaders, innovators, and role models. One particularly memorable campaign featured a montage of athletes training, playing, and overcoming challenges, with a voiceover that reminded viewers that greatness wasn't just about winning games. It was about the impact you had on the world around you. It was a powerful message, one that resonated deeply with Nike's audience. The sportswear industry was, and always had been, fiercely competitive. But what set Nike apart, and what continued to make it successful, even in the face of high-profile signings like Clark's Adidas deal, was its ability to stay true to its core values while also embracing change. Nike wasn't just a brand, it was a movement. It represented more than just athletic apparel. It represented the drive to be better, to push boundaries, and to challenge the status quo. That's why, even as the industry shifted and new players entered the game, Nike remained at the forefront. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.